Okay, it's fun to figure out how do we finance discoveries in Mexico. You know, there's been over $8 billion raised for exploration and for development and for mining in the last 6 months. Who's paying for you to be here today? How are we getting here? What's happening? So let's look and see. So first off is for financing in Mexico, it takes a team of people. In fact, Doug Coleman here, we gave him a round of applause for the great conference, but also for his actually helping with this talk today. What Doug has is an amazing database. And what Doug has done is worked with Riverside in looking at what's happened in financings for the last 6 months. Now we also have here Pedro Herrera, Ron Burke, and other members of Riverside team that have helped to put this together. A forward-looking statement that I couldn't read from here, and I'm sure you can't either, which basically says is I'm a CEO and an enthusiastic president of a company. Apologize for the slowness in this thing. It doesn't seem to be moving very well. So the talk outline starts off with some recent examples from the market of what we've been doing, also some different methods that we've been seeing in terms of financing. Some of the big deals that we've seen and the flows of money, some of the all the recent discoveries that we've done, and particularly what we really want to talk about is how do we creatively survive during those lows? And now with financing, we're getting things to move ahead. Muy bien. Okay, basically, the market started to take off. We're starting to see a movement in the markets, and what the markets have done has really been going because of the strongness of the US dollar, the strength of the American money is actually forcing people to want to invest in other places. Our dollar goes further. So with financings, there have been much money raised, $8 billion raised. In Mexico, we've only had less than 350 million of that come to Mexico in the last 6 months. A lot of the money wants to come to Mexico. It's nice to be able to come to Mexico. The exchange rate has made it more popular. So if you have a US-funded business and you're able to bring it into Mexico, you can go further, you can get more done. But really where the financing dollars has been going is more into Canada. Well, one of the things that's happening is here in Mexico, we're not able to actually spend the money necessarily efficiently. We have had a history over the last 6 years of not putting forth new titles, not getting out projects, not being able to forward them through the different processes. Also, we've had some challenges in permitting. Those type of blockages are causing capital to not come here. The market is taking off. The rocket ships, things are blasting. The market is really going. But here in Mexico, we're not seeing it happen as much. Over the next 3 days, we're all here. We can actually work together to actually discuss what are some things, some tactics that we can do to work to make it go better. Some of the things that we've seen go on, and we just had a great talk about the success at El Tigre, Oceanus Gold, has been lots of private placements. Over the last 6 months, we've had in private placements over $85 million raised in private placements, and companies like Kootenay, Almaden, Oceanus are many examples. Also, there's been financings through farming the project to someone else. For example, as Urjur Minerals was able to take a project from Teck, and now Teck is spending 3x that amount of money back to doing exploration. So there are new discoveries happening in Mexico. How are they being financed is actually quite diverse. Some of the other diverse ways is through purchase earn-in agreements, like the purchasing of Plata Latina, where Fresnillo is buying into things, or the joint venturing. Another is actually through strategic alliances, or particularly through initially trench work and then doing drilling. So we can see these type of different structures that can help finance exploration, can finance new discoveries. So in Mexico, we've had 12 new discoveries in the last 12 months. Some of those new discoveries that we're seeing are coming from different types of structurings, not simply from private placements, but instead also through joint funding, joint development, and in fact, even like Silvercrest Metals in a spin-out. So inside the portfolio of what was Silvercrest Mines, they had quality projects that were not able to get the capital. How do you finance discoveries in Mexico is you bring the conscience, the knowledge of these projects forward. One of the ways you can see those projects coming forward is in the commodity that you focus on. So over the last 6 months, the financings from Mexico, actually 12 months, For the last financing in Mexico, over 30% has been on gold. 35% has been on silver. Silver is so important here in Mexico, and we see that's happening, but also copper. We also see zinc, and lithium has actually been getting some funding as well here in Mexico, as well as graphite, iron, and other things. Where does the money go? A lot of the money goes into brownfields exploration. So where the discovery's been going on, we'll have talks over the next couple of days about Mulatos and the discoveries they've been having. Endeavor Silver has also been making good discoveries. Brownfield situations have been a big part of the last 2 years of where the discoveries are. The financing in Mexico, with over $350 million that's come into exploration in Mexico, a lot of that has been into brownfield settings. Some of the other discovery approaches have been using the cash flow model, using out of cash flow, growing some of the discoveries. Another place that we're seeing is in debt streaming, and royalty has actually been a way to finance some of the exploration and new discoveries. There have been programs in the southern Mexico with companies like Altius actually putting forth money to be able to fund grassroots exploration in Mexico. So it's a real plethora, very exciting to see how many different ways we've been able to finance new discoveries and new exploration in Mexico. Of course, the private placements continue to be strong. Institutional bought deals. If you go through the literature and you realize following the transactions have been happening, the bought deals are there. But less than 5% of all that money that's coming in is coming into Mexico. A lot of that money that's coming in is going to places where the bought deal, the projects can be advanced. So during this time, if you can want to come and talk to me at my booth, we can discuss your projects and specifically how we might look at how do those move ahead and what do you do? One of the ways we've been doing it is with strategic alliances, working with major partners, trying to explore with them, and of course, the joint venture earn-in. And finally, the clawback is a discovery example. So here's a photo of a drill rig. We recently have drilling, and we'll have drill core tomorrow at our booth. We have lots of different approaches that are going for new discoveries and making new discoveries here in Mexico. The debt financing is really a big issue. So of the $350 million that was raised for Mexico, what percent do you guys think was actually for reservicing of debt? Raise your hand. What do you think? Was it 50%, 60%? It was 68% of all that money was actually restructuring of debt. So in fact, in order to do exploration, the first thing is to get out of the debt crisis that's been happening. And so that debt has been overweighting these projects. The changes in the Mexican mining law have caused some problems for financing. Some of the problems for financing is the way you capitalize stripping, the way you capitalize your development. So for us as explorationists, we kind of wonder, why is the money not coming? Part of it is those rules, those changes in the mining law that are actually affecting the way people evaluate projects here in Mexico, making Mexico less competitive. So I think when we see for financing in Mexico, there's lots of creativity, lots of opportunity, but some of the impacts that we're seeing is that a lot of the companies are going to other jurisdictions. We're seeing companies diversify beyond Mexico. We're seeing companies sell their assets in Mexico and go outside. So us as an industry and us as explorationists have this opportunity to really go and talk to the people that make decisions here in Mexico to point out that there is potential, there is capital, there's a wish for growth of financing. People in Mexico are being very creative. They're getting it out of existing production. They're getting it from doing bridge development. We're doing lots of different ways to get it. But you look at companies like Alamos Gold, and they're now working in Canada. You look at companies that are doing financings like Coeur, and what's Coeur doing is they're moving into other jurisdictions as well. They're very strong here, working at Palmarejo, but a lot of the capital, they raised over $200 million in a market financing. But what they were really doing was retiring the debt. So they were buying out the debt. So we have had money raised for companies working here in Mexico, but it's not going into drilling. It's not going into new discoveries. And even so, we still came up with 12 new discoveries. And probably more as I talk to you guys over the next 3 days. But there are many new discoveries happening. There's lots of good discoveries to be made here in Mexico, but the deployment of capital is being limited by some of these situations. As you know that, there's an opportunity to speak to government representatives, talk to political people you realize, and as you go about, to say, hey, look, there's a lot of capital that wants to come from Canada, from Australia, from Great Britain. Mexico has not been able to deploy it. Riverside actually had the loss of $11 million of undeployable capital the last 3 years. We actually had the assignment of capital, but if you go over an investment cycle and you actually can't get title, or if you go over an investment cycle and you can't get permit, or if you go over an investment cycle and you can't get the Libertad, the capital doesn't stay. It loses confidence and it goes elsewhere. This is the effect of what we're seeing, and yet we're having neat new discoveries. The work that's happening at La Colorada, and Mel just gave a really exciting talk about the district and the history there. And you look at the growth here of how Argonaut is doing it. Yet Argonaut bought this project as part of a buying of what company? Pediment. And what was the asset that Pediment had? San Antonio and La Vaca. And what we see instead is they're having to work, for example, in Durango. And they did a purchase of the Fresnillo ground around the Castillo mine, and that gives them another 3 years of mine life. So the capital that could have been for the development of a new mine, instead is going to the development of existing mines. There is opportunity here in Mexico. There's great projects. The brownfields is finding new things. The mines are expanding quite well. The topography at places such as here at Castillo is very favorable. The rainfall that we have in the Mesa Central is ideal. We don't have acid rock drainage. We don't have the challenges. We don't have populations over the top of these projects. Mexico is a great place to deploy capital. Agnico Eagle is doing very well here. And in fact, they've actually come up with now begun doing greenfields exploration, yet being a brownfields company historically. So here in Mexico, how do we fund exploration is out of production cash flow. The success at La India and Pinos Altos gives them brownfield success, which then gives them hope for other discoveries. Also, their exploration in Malartic and in Canada gave them new discoveries in Nunavut, and when they come up with those new discoveries, they realize they can do more. The acquisition, consolidation of Cade and Sol Toro, for example, provides a big exploration, big budget, big funding for more discoveries in a brownfield setting. So I really think you can see that the major companies are continuing to work here in Mexico, but they are diversifying beyond Mexico because of this deployment of capital. There are new discoveries being made in Mexico, and there's new opportunities with this financing of discoveries. A company that I'm really excited about is Endeavour Silver. They're doing a really great job of working out of cash flow. Really admirable. That's really what we want to do. And so they've been able to finance new discoveries in a brownfield setting. Us as explorationists, we have some prospect out there that we want to get developed. It's very difficult to get that financed. But if you have an existing mine, and you can therefore find more growth to that mine, it immediately comes into the cash flow. So it's so vital for the financing and financiability of projects. So for us as geologists, as explorationists, to think about how viable can we make this project and how can we make the capital, for example, Endeavour Silver continues to work here. They have other companies, Canark or other things that go beyond, but in Mexico, Endeavour Silver is able to operate and does a great job of expanding reserves, replacing as they grow. So you need a portfolio approach. So Riverside is one of these type of companies that brings a portfolio approach. We do sole risk exploration. We recently acquired the Magallanes project. We also have Tajitos and La Silla. We have a poster on the back there that has some of the drilling that we do, and we actually are sponsoring a master's thesis. Dylan Hume, he'll be here later today to discuss some of the work that we're doing. So sole fund exploration is one way to finance it, and that's done through private placements. Riverside recently closed a private placement. We hadn't financed in 6 years. But the markets come back, the markets are happening, the money is there. Riverside stock had tripled from our lows. It was a good time for us to raise money. We raised it over the market conditions, 20% over what we were trading at, and closed it with a half warrant. But that's what you can do, is providing warrants, providing access to capital and upside in good quality companies is one way. A second way to finance is through joint ventures. Option earn-ins. For example, Riverside's operating with Centerra Gold at the Glore project, and we'll have some maps here and people can discuss about that. We also have the Thor project as another copper porphyry project. Multiple commodities are available from Riverside. So that's one of the things when you go to financing, you find these different niches. So you go talk to these guys and someone wants copper, someone wants lithium, someone wants zinc, someone wants silver. So Riverside's worked up a portfolio of these projects so you can do that. So how do you finance discoveries in Mexico is make sure you have multiple different types of commodities. Financings are not new. This is an over 150-year-old from the old company in Peñoles exploration certificate for buying of shares for $100. We own this district. The districts are known. What Riverside's been able to do is provide high-quality projects for financings. The Peñoles project was able to finance 2 separate companies to get developed, to progress. Yet those companies then diversified into other directions, and so Riverside owns the project now as a resource asset with over 100 drill holes, with an open pit mine design, with an underground mine plan, and we welcome talking to any of you that are looking to become a producer. Riverside has an asset. We've been able to finance over the last 7 years, and we thank Miguel Heredia, Jorge Soret, other people from Riverside that have worked with us and have been so instrumental in making the success of Riverside. The financings of projects that where you have 100% tenure, where you're very clear and you can do it, that's financeable. And that makes a difference. So when you have a financeable asset, you can get those great videos of Globe Explorer and you can work with the drilling programs, and we get so excited to see that we can get out there and drill. Right now it's exciting, and I see some people over here from different IPOs that are happening. One of the new IPOs is Silver Viper. It's a sign of the times. It's exciting. New listing of companies, new opportunities. Riverside's Clemente project, a project that Jorge Soret and our team worked on and we're very excited to have in Riverside, has been able to now move ahead, and they're doing a $6 to $10 million IPO raise on this project that's inside of Riverside's portfolio. So here's Riverside. $20 million market cap, one asset is able to be unlocked in value for $6 to $10 million, just one asset. And we have 14 assets. That's the value of unlocking. That's happening right now. It's very exciting. Look at Oren Gold. They partnered with Gold Corp and got big financings and big growth based on the success they had in Mexico. The success at Caden, where Agnico bottomed out, they had that success, is able to help them to get new financings. Lots of money flowing in, $200 million, but not to Mexico. Silver One is exciting, and I just had a chance to chat a bit with Raul, and it's quite exciting to see how they're making great progress themselves in developing the exploration around a whole portfolio of projects that was inside of another company. So right now you see the financing, the unlocking of held tenements. Imagine what's possible in Mexico if we can actually have libertades, if we can have freeing up of properties, if we can have a changing in some of the tax laws. The sky's the limit. That rocket ship will take off here in Mexico. Currently, it's going and happening, and these guys are making a big difference. Azure is doing great with a new discovery right under the nose of Cananea. It's excellent. Many of us have maybe probably walked around El Alacron and seen these new discoveries happening. We're seeing the new discoveries with Oryx and Canasil. Really great, and they both financed. They took advantage. The money was there, the discovery was there. After the project became more risked with metallurgy, didn't work out, but they had the money in the bank. They were able to move ahead, took advantage. Both companies working quickly. One of the key things is right now in financing is working quickly. We've kind of gone through the financing season of the spring. Things start to get hot in Mexico. People start to work, but they don't get hot in Toronto from financings. People want to see the money now going in the ground. Now we'll see what's going to happen, but it's exciting to see how quickly a new discovery gets the excitement. Bacanora Minerals, creative, metallurgy, getting going in the lithium space. Great to see for Mexico, putting that on the map. Right now today, there's a huge battery conference going on in Berlin right now, and in Berlin, there's great interest in Europe for green tech and for technologies, and yet the capital wants to come to Mexico. If you can get these titles, it would be going for it. But it's interesting that they are with Bacanora Minerals. Santa Elena is a real unlocking of value. Very exciting. First Majestic, great company, comes in and buys Santa Elena. What do? Is they spin out Silvercrest Metals as a new company. The shareholders of Silvercrest Mines get shares in First Majestic, get shares in in Silvercrest Metals. Silvercrest Metals goes from 5 cents to well over $1. I think it's actually at $2 now. It's an incredible gain. That's all in 1 year. Amazing opportunities for investors. When the investors get those type of opportunities and those type of returns, the money comes. It gets sticky. It does come here. There's a chance to get it. But we got to unlock the value that way, and it's so exciting. Right now in Mexico, Almaden, great company. In fact, they've been going for many years, and they spin out Almadex. This is a place where 1 and 1 equaled 3. Almaden spun out Almadex. Turns out Almaden kept almost the same share price, same valuation, yet they created a whole other company that actually got another $80 million, $60 million financing, $80 million of value out. So the combined value turned out to be 130 plus 65, and each of them were able to finance themselves. So Almaden was able to finance, and Almadex was able to finance. Both of the companies were able to finance $3.5 million out of what was formerly just one company. That's creativity. That's unlocking the value. That's how we discover and how we fund new discoveries in Mexico. There's never been a time there hasn't been so much access to capital now. It's really happening, it's really flowing, but it's not coming currently to Mexico. It's going to Canada, it's going to other places, it's now going to Ecuador. It's now exciting going to Chile, it's trying to go to Argentina, it's trying to go to other places. It'd love to come to Mexico, it's always come to Mexico in the past. Right now, we really have a chance. In the next 90 days, the market will be going quiet, and then it'll start to warm up again in the fall, start to get active. So over the summertime is the time to position those projects for the next season of financing, which starts in September. The companies that have actually operated out of cash flow are amazing, and Impact Silver's done great. So exciting to see how they've been able to use a centralized mill to feed it in, to make it work. But you know what? That's all of a sudden been a huge business in Peru. And the guys in Peru have raised $82 million on that model in the last 6 months. Gainey Capital, an operating company here, is trading at a $6 million valuation. They have a mill that can produce 500 tons a day of milling capacity, could do work, yet people are not seeing the value right now in Mexico. Yet it's getting an overvaluation in other places. So I think how do you finance discoveries in Mexico is you make sure people at least try to stay here. Look at Avino Silver. Avino, the company name, coming from here, from mining in Durango, and yet now they've diversified into Canada to work other places. So we really have a chance to see here the next tier of discoveries from the projects that we have can be developed here in Mexico. There's great potential here in Mexico. The key things are the capital cost accounting, streaming and metal pricing. One of the things that happens is that we have metal pricing and streaming deals. For example, Silver Wheaton did a deal for the development of the San Dimas district with what's now Primero Mining, and they actually sell the silver at $5. Yet what price is silver today? Around $18. So if they're selling it at $5 to Silver Wheaton, but they're actually in the market, Silver Wheaton's able to sell it for $18 an ounce, there's $13 an ounce that's not getting credited here in Mexico. It's called transfer pricing. It's part of a transactional deal. It wasn't necessarily any intent to do that on Mexico. They've done it around, but what happens is that tax burden hits the company now. So Primero's sitting with something like maybe $500 million in taxable liability, and it goes back and forth. Those type of things hanging over the market hurts the financeability for discoveries. So here in Mexico, resolution of these type of issues is vital. Thank goodness we haven't had tailing spills. Thank goodness we haven't had nationalizations. We really have a good thing going here in Mexico, but really around these transfer pricing and metal deals is a big issue. Also paying back Aviva. Is it recoverable? Many junior companies come here to do work with the perception that they'll be able to get back the money. Riverside actually does the recovery of EVA for 5 other companies. We're glad to help work with other companies and try to help get back to EVA. Ourselves, we had to do that to be sustainable. We as a small company couldn't afford to be here if we didn't get back to EVA, yet I couldn't keep the business going with enough accountants and stuff to get it back if we were so small. So you have to rebuild your businesses with the reality. Most importantly is the speed of concessions. So Mexico might look at the mining industry as a piggy bank. Maybe you want to keep putting money in, but the piggy bank can be broken if these 4 issues aren't solved. How do you value these? What are the valuations for financing? So when we finance projects, what are the key things we want to do? One is looking at underlying deals, and is there ability or are there already offtake agreements or other types of agreements? The second is the share structure. How tight are these companies, or what is the liquidity that they're having in share transactions and share value? These financial terms are key for us as discoverers, exploration, to understand that those are some of the things we as geologists need to deal with and think about when we're actually looking at a property that we want to help finance for a discovery. When we look at the projects, the financial types are doing a discounted cash flow. They're looking at how quickly is this going to be into production. And yet look at how slow some of our projects are moving through currently. It's a big challenge for us to be able to stand there, myself, when I have to go to talk to capital, and they say, well, how quickly can you be in production? And you have to say with a straight face, what are you going to say? How quickly is it going to go? They do a lot of review of other things, and Mexico has been highly valued. It used to be the place that people had high valuations on projects. So right now it is financeable and there's opportunities, and currently it's a lot cheaper in Mexico. Right now it's expensive in Canada. Transactions that are going on are actually much higher there. The value at the stage, the development projects in Mexico get the highest value, and what we have to see is that those are actually getting it. So it's taking a portfolio. So if you have a portfolio of different projects, everything from grassroots exploration through to production, if you have a range of locations, everywhere from northern to central Mexico, you can diversify through commodities. Having that diversification allows you to be financeable through many different types of financial instruments. Mexico is a crowd. We'd love to move ahead as a group. We wish to have discoveries. We want to fund these discoveries. There wants to be money deployed. To get that money deployed, the money's been raised, but the funds are going to receptive regions. The funds are moving toward earlier pipeline projects now. We're seeing that going towards grassroots exploration. What we're also seeing is that the need to free up the ground. We have to tweak the investment rules. We have to improve the safety. We have to clean up and work on the tenure. Those things will allow for the capital to come. Mexico does have a good chance, but over the last 30 years, we used to have the money coming. It's been losing ground, and right now we're losing ground. The way we're going to get there is through us as a group talking to our people that are getting us here, communicating with the government, and particularly working with the officials and getting people to realize that in these 3 days where we're together here, we have worked and communicated as a group now to go forward and talk to the other people to basically say, look, we got $350 million here to Mexico, but most of that, 68%, went to cover debt. It does want to come to do exploration, and it'll come to the major companies, the mid-tier, the small companies, the new IPOs, the growth in the grassroots exploration, but we do need to make these changes. Making these changes will allow for much more capital to come. It's wanted to be here in the past. It would come back again. It doesn't have to go to Argentina, Ecuador, other places, but we really definitely, as a group, need to be working together to make sure that we focus on quality projects that can be operated safely. We need to make sure that we work with each other and the communities to be able to forward those projects forward. We can beat Peru, we can beat Ecuador, we can beat those places. We don't have the acid rock drainage, we don't have those challenges. Mexico wants to be financeable, and there's been a lot of new discoveries here. It's exciting to be at the Discoveries Conference where we're talking about discoveries, and so I felt today was a chance to actually put some of those discoveries in a context and how they've been financed. Thank you very much. ¿Hay algunas preguntas? So, if you were going to ask one question, I think all of you to think about is, looking at your project, is what is the one thing that's limiting its financeability? And I look forward to, please come by our booth, and I'd like to talk to you about your project and what's limiting its financeability. Maybe we could put our heads together and think about how maybe we could work together to find a way that could make it financeable. Thank you.